need the support, you need the connection. And we need to help be vulnerable enough with other people and be human enough with other people that we can give them ways that they can help us.
So at the beginning of this episode, we're going to need to put in, we started off with the word being be medicated.
And after a long ramblings,
we got to the conclusion that instead of be medicated, we're going to let Matt Larson do that one. We're going to talk about
he's great.
Human.
I could listen to Matt Larson for forever. But
so be human.
Yes.
You are here on this earth. You are a child of God.
You have your own personality, and you are not your problems. And it is impossible to feel that way when you are in the middle of your problems, in the middle of your curse and trial. And
yeah, you're bleeding out. You got to get help.
You are going to die if you don't get help.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm forever going to be this way. And you're not. And you're going to be okay.
It's taken a decade to learn that lesson, but it's a good one.
It's an important one.
Gracie's totally nervous about this, but she's willing to do it for me, and I'm really excited. So we're going to share a little bit of her story of why we are where we are at. And a huge part of that is Gracie getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. In 2014, it was right before her 9th birthday, and we had a lot of answers to a lot of prayers and a lot of unknown. We had no idea what we were getting into. So she was diagnosed, we moved to Idaho Falls, and now here we are. I want to tell you the story with Gracie.
It was funny because yesterday I was hanging out with Harold
the cat.
The Harold the cat out in the office.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, my left eye is all squishy. And then he was like, can you come over at like 7:30? And I was like, yeah, I can. And I was like, oh good. So I came in here and I washed my face. I put makeup on.
Now, you're kind of leaning. Is it because you're trying to get the microphone? Does it not feel comfortable? Or you do feel comfortable?
I'm just facing you.
Okay, that's okay. Sit up tall and shake it out and be normal and natural.
I don't think you know this, but I'm not very normal and natural. I'm kind of an awkward person. But I'm really awkward and weird.
Your shell has been broken, and the awkward
now
and weird is blooming.
And yeah, he randomly is like, "You're so awkward," and it's so funny. And I'm like, I know.
Are you on silent?
Always.
No, is your phone on?
Yes, on silent, always.
This is my body, and this is the middle of the mic.
My chair's pointing that way.
Okay.
The mic is coming down.
You can turn your chair then, if it's weird.
No, of course it will mess up.
Oh my goodness. We can do this. Okay, stand up. Stand up. There we go. Okay.
It's so scary.
Okay, deep breath. Welcome to the JOYrific podcast, Gracie.
It's taken me 4 seasons, but I'm here.
4 seasons, but you're now here. And you are a huge part of what JOYrific is. Thank you for being the best teacher of how to parent.
I need to send a cheetah runner to go get my water bottle because I can feel my face flushing.
Okay, there's my water bottle's right there.
My emotional support water bottle.
Okay. This is fun.
Hey, Finn.
So I want you to introduce yourself and tell us the word that is chosen for this episode.
Medicated, right?
Be medicated. Gracie and I sat down for a long time and we talked about all of the things about being medicated. And I'm going to pull out a highlight reel for those that only have less than 20 minutes to listen to. But if you want to listen to the whole deep dive conversation, you can listen to the deep dive episode that really gets into the nuts and bolts of what it is that we're discussing today.
I feel like we didn't talk very much about medication.
I know. I kind of feel like maybe we should change the word. You are a word person. So like be diabetic would be dumb.
I'm not going to that.
But
That goes against the whole thing that I was talking about.
I know. But that's kind of
I kind of want to be disabled a little bit.
be disabled.
Which is hard. But
So we're
or
coming.
like be human. Because it's more than
Oh,
just
I like that.
it's more than just your disability. It's more than what you're going through right now. Because in the long story short, you are human. And we all have stories. Otherwise, we'd be really boring.
Yeah. Okay. I support us saying this episode could be titled Be Human.
Okay. I like that.
Be human. All right.
Okay. My name is Grace Braithwaite, or Gracie, as my friends and family know me. I, the oldest of the Braithwaite clan, the little family army that we have. I am 19, turning 20 this year. And I am on the road to figuring out where I'm going to end up in my life. But I have had a lot of ups and downs and bumps and trials that I feel pretty confident in where I'm going. And I've had awesome parents to help teach me.
What word did we choose to talk about today?
We chose medicated, and I love words. So medicated is a good one because it has so many different stigmatisms that like society puts, especially right now with like ADHD and all of the different mental health, and like you can go to any doctor's office and get some medication for some things, and the people who like super like you can take rosemary for some or another, and that helps your so there's medicine all around us in a time that like it's normalized, which I think is funny because like the history of medicine, I've been kind of hooked on the Salem witch trials and like witch trials and stuff, and the people who were burned, the witches, the women that were burned, they were healers. So I thought that was cool because we, as society, it's kind of like survival of the fittest is usually what it is. Because, like, you're cavemen out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to freeze to death. Or it's the medieval times and someone puts honey on your cut as an antiseptic, and then suddenly she's a witch because she got rid of your infection. Mm-hmm. And so now we are a lot more educated and we know what is like we know the science behind it, which I think is cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Do you know what one of the first signs of a civilization being a community becoming a civilization is? One of the first signs. Do you know what it is?
I know a couple of them, but what are you thinking of?
Finding evidence of a broken femur bone.
Yeah, because you die. Like
if you're on your own, you die.
You just die. That's like one of the most instant. You're just dead. But in society,
well, it's not necessarily instant, but you like can't run away from predators. You can't get yourself food. You like, I mean, it's a terrible death. But you're just a sitting duck waiting to curl up and die. Yeah.
But in society, they'll protect you and they'll allow
take
you to heal.
And okay, so the word that we have is be medicated. Mm-hmm. And what being medicated means for our family particular is a little bit unique because 2014, you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And we had a long journey trying to figure out what was happening with you. And the doctors weren't really helping. We went to several different pediatricians. I continued to get, all she needs is behavior modification.
Yeah, now I'm the most snooty little, you can't behavior modify me. Don't.
So they would blame it on me having all of these babies because I'd come into the office. You were my oldest. I had 5 little kids or 4 little kids or 3 little kids as we were trying to do this. And they would just say, oh, well, like, clearly.
She's not getting the attention she needs.
Yeah. So there was a lot of hard things that we had to go through for our medical journey. And I came from a family that never got sick. Like, that was our solution to life. So we just never got sick. And if we did get sick, the person that we went to was my parents' home teacher that lived down the street. And he was like a veterinarian.
Oh.
Like he had horses and stuff like that. And like, I do think he had a DO degree. So like he was a doctor, but we didn't go to his office. We would go to his living room and they would fix something. So I never went to the doctor as a kid, ever, ever. Like very few times. I can think of very few times that we did.
It was the 80s.
Thank you. Yes. 1983.
Well, I was quoting
Yes.
Bluey, but
Yeah. I love that episode. Which, speaking of Bluey, there's the like purple underpants one.
yeah, that one's really cute because I like that episode a lot because as someone who's in and out of doctors' offices and hospitals, you meet everybody and their uncle who's terrified of doctors. And I don't like going to doctors' offices. I don't like the possibility of something being wrong. But also with that episode, it like has helped heal parents' medical trauma and it helps kids be less nervous. And yeah, so if you haven't seen, I don't even know what it's called.
So when you were in the hospital as a little kid, one of your coping skills was drawing, and so you would sit and draw, and you drew Gracie Grape. And Gracie Grape, and all of these, you love drawing fruits and vegetables, and all of these fruits and vegetables turned into little like caricatures.
Oh, I had a whole story behind it. It was like,
yeah, you did.
The fruits and vegetables were the good guys, and then the bad guys were the sweets and the candies and stuff. And they all started as fruits and vegetables because all candies, or most candies, are like fruits and vegetable flavored, like strawberry. So then like strawberry donut or something.
Oh,
like,
that's
he
cute.
was evil, but the grape was it.
And I remember you drawing the peppers as the doctors. So the spicy ones, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we moved here, and you met Dr. Matt, who loves Dr. Pepper, and like it's just this like full circle moment of like they're.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, no, that's funny because all of my doctors were Peppers.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Dr. Pepper is Matt's whole thing.
So Gracie Grape gets diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and it was this little like caricature, and I wish that I would have recorded more of like little 9-year-old Gracie talking about Gracie Grape because it's adorable.
Oh, it's so cute.
It is adorable. So I'll see if I can find a video of you talking about it.
But that actually, when you said you want to talk about medication, that's actually what I was thinking about. Because my biggest thing with being type 1 is you can't let it be your whole personality. And that's what Gracie Grape was for me. Because, again, with the whole, like, society thing, in this day and age, like, if you're sick, it's like you get wrapped up in it, especially with a chronic illness like diabetes. And I know so many kids who've just withered away in themselves because they're diabetic and that's it. And, or they grew up that way with helicopter parents, and then now they're my age, out of the house, and they just are killing themselves because they just pretend like they're not diabetic.
So let's break it down into a couple of different points that we're going to discuss in our deep dive discussion today. So I like what you say. Number one is when you get a diagnosis, it's not your entire personality.
Don't let your diagnosis be who you are, because you're more than your problems.
Okay. And number two, maybe we could focus number two on the parents of someone who's gotten a diagnosis, or a caregiver of someone who's gotten a diagnosis. Is that a good?
No, that's really good.
Okay.
It's just as important, especially for young kids.
We're on this journey together.
Medication it's not hard for me, but it's not easy for me too, because it's been a tether all of my life. Like, I end up in the hospital if it goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
So...
Well, and I think that that's kind of the point. So I actually started this podcast with being medicated with Dr. Larson. So Dr. Larson is a double board certified child psychiatrist who is very knowledgeable and has been working in care patient clinics. He's started his own practice, and we've kind of been along that journey the whole time with him because we've known him over a decade now.
Which is crazy.
And I remember saying to him, Matt, because he was inpatient at the time, he'd only take inpatient care. So that's somebody that's in patient care means that there is imminent danger and they need to be addressed. And I said to Matt, please do outpatient care. Otherwise, we're just going to be inpatient. Like, we need coping skills to help with this massive diagnosis that we got. And he listened and he did it. And so we have a ton of tips from Matt Larson. So he's going to go into like the doctor side of being medicated and what that is. And as we started that podcast, one of the first things he said is there's very few medication. One of the first things he said is there's very few diagnoses that need daily medication in order to be alive. And one of them is type 1 diabetes. And I was like, oh, we know a lot about that. That's what we got.
It's in our butter fridge. It's in our butter
Container in the fridge. So insulin for type 1 diabetics. Also, like Parkinson's is another one. And my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And there are some other, but it's just a handful. Everything else are these synthetic drugs that help you to cope with life and help you to succeed in life. And with two different things. It's all about how you feel and it's all about how you function. So with those things, that's what Matt and I are going to talk about.
Yeah.
But so go listen to that podcast if you want to hear it. It's the Be Medicated with Dr. Matt Larson. But with you, I want to talk about from your perspective as you've had this diagnosis for 10 years. And we're going to talk about it in two different ways. The first one of your diagnosis doesn't define you.
No.
And the second one of being a caregiver of someone with a chronic illness.
Yes.
And your experience with being the child, me being the caregiver, and you've done summer camps.
And I think it's more than just caregiver. I think it's also just support for someone with a chronic illness.
Oh, I like that.
Because there's only so many caregivers that you have in your life, but everybody can be a support. And that's the main problem that I've seen with understanding diabetes is that people don't understand the difference between what we're told and all of the scary why everybody's scared of type 2 diabetes, which everybody can get, everybody will get eventually if you live long enough, because that's just how our bodies degrade.
Yeah.
And then type 1, which is not a choice, and it is manageable, but like going to any youth activity, I always got an orange and everybody else got donuts. Or like any trick-or-treating thing, I always got the sugar-free candy. And I was like, I want the give me the Butterfingers. I'm okay to eat the Butterfingers.
Yeah, like well-loving people that maybe miss the mark a little bit. And actually on the extended track with Jordan Hillam, we talk a lot about that situation of, because some of these podcasts, Gracie, I recorded right before you went to the hospital most recently and right after you went to the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's been on my mind because I started this podcast because I wanted to get my knowledge out of like everything that I was supposed to teach you that maybe I didn't teach you. And so I'm talking about it with my friends and recording it so that you can have this podcast on your morning commute.
I love listening to people talk about what they are experts in because it's really interesting. And I think that's what I like about your podcast is that you invite people to come on and they can just talk about for an hour and a half about what they know and what they're good at, because it's fascinating to listen to and watch someone talk about what they're good at.
I love that. And let's bring in the top 5 strengths, because your top 5 strengths and my top 5 strengths are very different.
Yeah, a little bit.
Which I'll pause here for a second. I do consulting for families with strengths. It's a strengths-based consulting, and we as a family have sat down and done it. And Gracie, you're so kind to do that. And we learned.
I love it.
We learned a lot about how you and I are so different. Do you know your top 5 off the top?
Okay, my top 5: context, relator, intellection, ideation, and empathy.
And my top 5 are futuristic, strategic, achiever, responsibility, and communication. And on here, like, you're not going to be able to see it, but on here, there is a chart that compares us with this power partnership that we're able to do.
Yeah.
And the longer the line, the farther apart we are. And we have a lot of
There's
long
a lot
lines.
of long lines.
We do have communication is pretty close for both of us. Ideation is pretty close for both of us. Maximizer and arranger are pretty close for both of us. And then
my futuristic is like 22. Her context is like 30.
Yeah.
It is the farthest to farthest.
Yeah. So what I like to explain to people is Gracie and I, we like stand back to back to each other. I only think about the future. She only thinks about the past. And here we are standing back to back with each other, trying to figure out the current moment.
It's a little. And then Emmy and Ainsley are in here. They're like, come on, guys, let's do it. And we're like, ah.
Yeah. So this consulting with Clifton Strengths is a great way to figure out how to communicate with your kid, because in the app, I love it has the what I bring and what I need, and then I can select on Gracie and what she brings and what she needs. So, for example, Gracie needs an understanding of the link between the past and the future, and I need a forward-looking focus on what could be. So we are just so opposite, and I love that. And I've actually really leaned into that as you have left the house, and as we've had these conversations when you call home or when you come home to visit. It's been a really interesting way for me to step back and say, like, how can we help each other with our strengths?
Yeah, because it's hard to like see the big picture one way.
Yeah,
or living with each other.
Yeah.
And getting angry over what I'm wearing because I just want to rebel against everything you do and say.
Do you remember when they called me and said...
Oh, yes, I do. We don't need to say that on... We're good.
A dress code violation.
Yeah. Yep. No,
yeah,
okay.
We're actually going to have a podcast episode with Shelly Smead, who is the principal.
I love Shelly Smead. She's my favorite.
Awesome.
And I love her because she called me out so many times. She's like, girl... Sit down. You know better than this. Like,
do you know that every time she talked to you, she had talked to me first? And she would call me and say, this is the situation. How would you like me to handle it? And I was like, oh, Shelly, you do you. Whatever you would do, that
go wrap her on the wrist.
Full permission to do you. You do you is what I would always say to her.
She is so good.
Okay, so let's get into the first point, this deep dive discussion of your diagnosis does not define you.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So it's funny because I have been writing essays for scholarships, and this is my main point. This is my main selling point because
Diabetes.
Diabetes is like my life. I don't know if you know this or not. It's kind of impactful. It's a little intense.
A little bit all-encompassing at times.
Yeah. And which, as a 9-year-old, like, I have to do the math. A diabetic... Let me look it up. Because I need links.
Context. Did we mention context is high in this scenario?
Okay, so what decisions are you making as a 9-year-old? You're thinking about, like, when's lunch? What snack can you have? What are you going to play at recess? The random game that you come up playing with. If you're into sports, like, oh, what's my sport team going to be? Or
maybe, like, what clothes am I going to wear? If you're even into
how
clothes.
I'm going to do my hair. Like,
Maybe.
Oh. I didn't even brush my hair.
Wait,
I had
do you remember
teachers.
when you did that ponytail?
Oh. I did a ponytail. It was like my first ponytail by myself. And I left like a
huge chunk
of
out.
hair out. And so I just cut it and then put it behind my mom's desk. So
it was a huge...
Nobody could find it. It looked like a rat.
It was a huge pile of hair. Look how much hair you have. You have a ton of hair. And it was... Yeah. So maybe not always making the best decisions, but trying to figure life out on your own. So that's a 9-year-old with a working pancreas.
Yeah, that's a normal 9-year-old, right? Like everybody.
Well, normal.
I don't know. I'm always weird and awkward.
Every 9-year-old's weird and awkward.
Oh, good. I've never grown out of it. So. People with type 1 diabetic make around 180 times more health-related decisions than people without diabetes. So
I would even challenge that it's probably higher than that. And then let's add on top of that, you are also diagnosed with celiac.
Yeah, so it's the 180 decisions is just correcting because, like, I can't, like yesterday I went and played games with the family and I can't have my phone next to me because I'm always checking it because, like, if I feel off, I'm like, oh, is my blood sugar dropping? Or, oh, am I going high? Like, the 180 is just manually clicking things in or manually changing your site. It's not talking about the 24/7 hum in the back of your head of, like, what's my blood sugar? What's my blood sugar? Do I feel weird?
Yeah, I saw something.
Is this normal? I drink over a gallon of water a day out of this little tiny thing because... from very young with diabetic, you're taught that you need to drink water. And so it's just become like a normal thing for me of, I need my emotional support water bottle. Otherwise, I'm scared I'm going to go high and feel gross.
Yeah. I saw a statistic the other day that was talking about how many times in 1 year you are recovering from a high or a low.
Oh, I saw that too. And it's like
it's
50.
It's significant.
Yeah. It's like 52 days straight. Like
52 days of the year that you...
Like in total hours.
Yeah. Oh, man. Do you remember where we saw that statistic?
I saw it on... One of my friends posted it or shared it on their story. I don't know where it is. It's insane.
Significant.
Like, it's a lot.
It's significant. And then on top of that, we have doctor's appointments that we go to every quarter. We have blood work that we go to. And... there's so many things that I want to talk about, but I want to hear your perspective about not being defined by your diagnoses.
I love my diabetes, regardless of what people say. I get people coming up to me, especially right now, because I was just in the hospital. They're like, are you feeling okay? Like, that was so scary. And I'm like, it was scary, yes. And it was intense, but also in the hospital.
Wait, do you want to tell the story of how you ended up in the hospital?
Yeah, I'll tell the story. Okay, so I have been sick with something or another for the past 6 months since I moved out. And especially once it gets cold, every January, I always end up with something grody.
And we took out your tonsils this summer.
My tonsils because last January, I had something wrong with my tonsils and they got infected.
Yeah.
And then the January before that, I had type A influenza and borderline pneumonia. And so I was in bed the whole time. Yeah. And then before that, we had COVID. And so
special.
It's literally every January.
Yeah.
And so I have had this perpetual cough that's just won't go away. And it was dry cough. So then I went to the doctor in urgent care after.
Which wasn't our normal doctor. It was a doctor down
in
Logan, your college town.
Which I have my doctors. I like my doctors because I'm very picky about my doctors.
It's our uncle, Uncle Carl.
Yes. And I trust him. And he gave this doctor down there, he looked at my throat and he was like, you have this thing, and it's like postnasal drip.
Well, and they said it's like cobblestoning.
Yeah, I got like blistering in the back of my throat because my immune system was fighting a sickness that was no longer there. And so it was just making my nose, which I'm like, go immune system. Thank you for
Little
a
overachieving.
little overachieving. It's going above and beyond. Doing the paperwork that hasn't been done yet. And so he gave me a steroid and a cough medicine. And if you're type 1 diabetic or blood sugar, know anything, steroids are spike like no other. So, and
he did tell you that
he told me that it would go up, but we
Yeah.
did something that I was taking it in a way that it shouldn't have spiked like it did. But he said on day 3 is when it's going to get bad, if it gets bad.
And Wednesday you were fine, Thursday you were fine, Friday you were fine. So then Saturday.
So Saturday I went down to Provo with my boyfriend to go to a Smash Bros tournament that he was in and like hang out with some of his family, hang out with my family. And my blood sugar could not go down.
And so you got there by noon.
I got there by noon.
So you were fine when you left. You'd filled up your pump.
I filled up my pump, all the things. And I normally go high when I travel too because like sitting in a car, I don't travel well in my ears, the snacks. Altitude, like breathing wrong, makes my blood sugar go up.
The moon's out.
The werewolves are barking.
So you got there by noon.
And my blood sugar was like, it was on the rise, but that was like normal for a car trip. So then I didn't eat very many carbs for lunch because I knew that like I'm gonna let it go down. And I was drinking a lot of water, a lot of Propel, another one of my strange addictions. I drink a lot of Propel, a lot of electrolytes, doing all the right things, and it just wouldn't go down. So then after lunch with my cousin, then we went to his thing, and my blood sugar was still like plateaued.
So we're
high,
like HIGH high,
which
plateaued.
means 400 or around there or above.
400 or above. Like
which the normal range is
400.
80 to 180. That's the normal range. So I was at like 400 and drank so much liquid. I was peeing every 2 seconds because I'm trying to flush out my system. And so it went on like that until around 7 is when we went to dinner with my boyfriend's brother and his now fiance. And I got so sick because
this is when you looped us in.
That's when I started calling you because I had given myself an extra like 50 units of insulin, which is not normal. I use 300 in 3 days.
Yeah.
So I was already at like
so dosing a lot and nothing's
100
going
units.
And you didn't have an extra site with you.
I didn't have an extra because it was only a day trip. You were supposed to be there.
Go down and back.
And what happens when you're high for that long is your blood gets acidic, and then your body starts eating itself.
And it's called diabetic ketoacidosis.
Yeah.
DKA.
DKA, which everybody's worst nightmare. And so I was sick, and so we went to an urgent care. They said that they were closing, so we went to a different one. They said that they couldn't help us, and so we went straight to the ER. And they took me back. My blood sugar was like 6.
It was like 680 or something.
6 something. So then I got on a drip line.
Okay, so now this is my side of the story because
you weren't there.
We weren't there, and so Gracie calls from the floor of In-N-Out Burger's bathroom.
Yeah, because
and says, "I'm throwing up."
I was not throwing up at that point.
I'm really nauseous.
I was nauseous.
Something like that. And so we have a group thread with her and her boyfriend and Ainsley, and he actually named it "Keep Gracie Alive" thread. And
which
so
I think it's hilarious.
It is really cute. And so we just started. So I sent a couple urgent cares that were within a few blocks of there, and it's getting to be closing time. And in the past, we've had similar scenarios like this, but you've been under my household in my life, right? In this town that we grew up in, that we have access to the doctor that we normally go to. So this is kind of like your first, I am an adult doing adult things.
Emergency.
Figuring out your own situation. And so we sent the ER, and which I think it's funny that it's like the same hospital that you were born in.
Yeah, they had my records, but under a different phone number.
So you go to the emergency room, and boyfriend's talking to us on the phone about like what's happening, and you're getting checked into ICU. And at that point, we're like, when you called at 7, we said, hey, we can come down and help if you want us to come down and help. And you guys said, no, we got this. We're okay. And we don't know if you're just going to go in and get fluids and then get discharged. Like,
because that's how it usually was.
Yeah.
But
so now they're saying ICU. And I'm like, ICU? Like, or just getting checked in upstairs? Like, what?
No, it was, because we found out is that only the nurses in the ICU can handle insulin because it can go so wrong. And if you accidentally give insulin to somebody, it kills them. So
coming back to being medicated, you as a 9-year-old or anybody with type 1 diabetes.
My little cousin niece thing, she's was like 4 when she got diagnosed.
You have an insulin pump that provides insulin where if you overdose, you will die. That's how it is. And Uncle Carl has helped us to figure out, like, you're not going to immediately die. Like, first you'll go into like a coma, and then you'll lay down and then like pass out in a coma. We can get you to the emergency room. So we have like 12 hours before you're dead.
And by that time, just take off her pump and she'll come up eventually.
Well, like there's glucagon we can do, and there's like inhalable stuff you can do. And like really his secret is
some maple syrup,
like pour maple syrup all over her mouth because she won't aspartame on it, or
it'll absorb through your gums.
Yeah. So this be medicated for us is kind of extreme. Like, there are extremeness
a 9-year-old
to it.
Doesn't have to think about like what 9-year-old knows that?
So let's go back to Gracie at 9 years old, doesn't want to go to PE. And so she goes into the bathroom and gives herself 999 carbs, which is where it maxes out 3 times in a row, which her little body back then, that's like 8 units.
Which I give myself 10 units now for an easy correction.
But this was like itty bitty Gracie. So 8 units times 3. So now she has 8, 16, 24 units on board, and she's double arrows down.
And running around at PE.
And in PE, they actually were doing the parachute that she liked to do. So she didn't tell anybody that she'd overdosed. And then all of a sudden she's out at the playground, double arrows down, because it takes 2 hours to really get into effect. And so, like at 9, you overdosed to get out of PE. And Uncle Carl said, and we went through all of this whole discussion, and like, that's very scary. Nothing about that is cool. Like, as a parent.
What's funny is I thought I was so clever. I was like,
oh, you're like so clever, but so dumb.
I also don't really remember what happens afterwards.
Yes, so, like, that's the point. So then the counselor, which is not the counselor that is there now, the counselor was like, but what did you do? And I was like, stop asking her. She has no idea. Like, she is not going to be able to tell you what she's done at this time. She is not in trouble. We have got to move on from this point. Like, we're in danger. We're going to fix the danger. And then we can figure out the parenting skills or the counseling skills after that. But right now, there's an immediate problem. We are going to fix the problem. We are not going to train. We're not going to teach. And that all goes back to JOYrific, right?
Stop asking me assertive questions when my brain isn't working.
She doesn't have her ears on. It does no good. No,
I don't even not have my ears on. My brain is full of cotton. It is just, it is gone.
So we know that about Gracie in the ICU at 20 or 19 here. And so we're getting communication off of this text thread and like their updates. And we actually do know you are in the safest place that you could be.
Yeah.
Being in the ICU, they know how to take care of you. They're monitoring you closely.
It might be a little bit above and beyond overkill care, but I'll take it. It's funny too because by the end of it, I was poking my own finger. I was disconnecting my own IVs pretty much. Yeah. I wasn't. I was disconnected at that point. But they were like, "You're like not a patient to us.
You're not a typical ICU patient.
You're like." You know what you're doing. This wasn't your fault, which I needed to hear because
we needed to hear
it had been 10 years of me managing. I have had like below average A1Cs for kids my age.
Mm-hmm.
And then I end up in the hospital with DKA, and
And you actually, when you got in, it was
so
actually
hard.
only moderate ketones.
Yeah.
And
Because
so,
I had drinking so much water. I did all the right things. I kept flushing my system. I know
Yeah.
how to get rid of ketones.
yeah. So all of that to say, like, we just roll with the punches. Like, this is how it is, and it's scary. And like within any moment, you can end up in the emergency room within 12 hours. You know what happened actually that day? It was kind of a busy day, and I was talking to someone. We were at basketball practice, and they were telling me about the stuff that was happening in their house and how terrible, like they had a flood, and I thought, oh man, that's so terrible. Like, I'm so glad that's not happening to me. Like, I don't have time for that right now in my life.
You jinxed me.
I know.
Mama.
And then 6
I
hours.
ended up in the hospital.
6 hours later, I get this call of you're in the hospital. So, God works in mysterious ways and helps us learn mysterious things.
On 3 IVs.
So, never say never, I would say, with this. And anyways, so, and let's come back to the point of, you did great. Garth ended up driving down on Sunday, and he stayed with you. You guys stayed there Monday. You got discharged on Monday.
Yeah.
He brought you back to your apartment in Logan, and
then
like
you showed up the next day, and then
so
I slept.
So you got back in your apartment in Logan on Monday, and life resumes. Just like that's life.
They had homework.
You were out of ICU. Now you're back to normal life, and that's a really foreign concept to a lot because this diagnosis is real special. Like, this is just where
I got
we live.
a little, like, chart that's like, how is your recovery going? Put stickers on, rate your pain for every day.
A daily chart for 90 days of rate your pain from when you were in the ICU and how you're doing now.
I didn't even think about it.
So Tuesday, I did come down, and I came down for me.
Yeah.
And I know that, and I'm not a helicopter parent.
No, you're not, but you're a mom.
But I am a mom, and like...
And it's hard.
Oh, it is hard.
And, like, I was fine. But you helped me a lot. You helped, like, clean my room a little bit. You vacuumed it. You got me food. Like, it wasn't, we just sat and talked about Granny with you so that you couldn't stay overnight for the week.
I did bring Granny Annie, and she's the kindest human that I know.
Oh,
she's one of the best
sweet.
caregivers.
She's so sweet. And I miss you guys.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because when I moved into my apartment, I didn't tell my roommates I was diabetic until I had this scare like 2 months later.
Oh yeah, that was the first.
Because my pump stopped working and I didn't have any needles to give myself shots.
Yeah.
Because I haven't done that. Like, I didn't need to do that. Like, it's been years since I've needed to do that.
I don't think. Well, in the 10 years you've been diagnosed, we've never had a pump malfunction and not turn back on, like complete malfunction.
Just died.
Which we did have it on the church history tour this summer.
Almost.
But
it was like
had
an hour.
That same screen pump malfunction, but we were able to restart it somehow, and it like kicked back in and started working. So this one was so that was September, first malfunction that we've ever had. I did drive down, which I was planning on actually getting my haircut that next day. So I was planning on driving down. Anyways, I just came a couple of hours early. And we called insurance and got the new pump, and it was overnighted, and we did the things. So coming back to, that is when you told your roommates.
That is when I told my roommates. And that's when Ethan got Dexcom on his phone, I think.
The follow app,
so he can see my numbers.
Let's talk about the follow up for a second. And this is kind of leading into the caregiving second discussion that we have. So hold on, we'll come back to the follow app.
Okay.
Let's talk about how diabetes doesn't define you.
Oh, I can't let it. It will kill me if I let it.
So what does that mean?
Chronic illnesses and depression and anxiety come hand in hand, because if your femur gets broken, you're just left out to die.
Yeah.
So we are not wired to constantly be thinking about our health in the same way that a 9-year-old has to think about her new diabetic diagnosis. So, like, it's nerve-wracking constantly. Constantly nerve-wracking. And I've learned what to look for, so I know when it's getting a little dangerous and stuff. But
You're saying the mental health side of the diagnosis.
no, I'm talking about diabetes side of it.
Like the DKA side of the diagnosis.
Yeah, and like I know when I start like going high or when I start going low, and if I always have a sight in my bag, and I always have like 4 packs of fruit snacks because going low is the worst, and being in the hospital is the worst.
We're gonna pause here for a minute, and those that need to leave can leave, and we love you. But we'll do an extended track, and the extended track will have a conversation. It'll be unhurried and unfiltered. We'll just kind of finish off our conversation. We're glad that you want to stay and be a part of this, so go to the extended track for the rest of the podcast.
I like it.